for the next 4 weeks going to be talking about the Christmas story. Big surprise, right? No, I we've been doing all year the hard sayings of Jesus. And so in just a minute, I'm going to explain why this kind of fits in there. But I wanted to start out, I always like to start out with some kind of a story that we can relate to that has something to do with the story or the sermon I'm about to speak. So C.S. Lewis, almost everybody in here knows who he was, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, right? Lucy and Aslan, yep. C.S. Lewis, he was basically tutored by a guy, and this guy was a staunch atheist. I don't know if you've ever heard C.S. Lewis's story. Um, anyway, at one point, C.S. Lewis decided that he would honor his teacher by becoming an atheist too. And his teacher kind of got mad at him and said, no, 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 no. I want you to think about it. I want you to look into it. I want you to research it. I don't want you just to come and tell me you're an atheist because I am. That would dishonor me something awful because I'm your teacher. And so because of that, C.S. Lewis, well, you all know, right? I'll come to that in a minute. Nancy Pearcey, if you've not heard of her, she also had teachers in school, and when she was in college, she had a college teacher that was some kind of a religion or philosophy type class, and she wrote this thing called, which I think it's Bart Ehrman also wrote, no, not Bart Ehrman, some other, Russell, somebody Brand. I've lost his name. But anyway, she wrote a paper in this college class called Why I Am Not a Christian, which mimics a really popular, famous paper written by this guy whose name I can't think of. But anyway, she thought that her teacher, who was an atheist, would be impressed. He did the same thing. He called her aside and said, no, no, no. Don't you just parrot what I've said. I want you to go and look into it. Before you tell me you're an atheist, I want you to go and look into it. And she did. She ended up with Francis Schaeffer over at L'Abri in Switzerland at one point and ended up becoming a Christian because an atheist told her to go look into it. That goes to show you that God can use anybody, right? He can use anybody. And because of that, because he used atheists, we have all these books and more, I probably didn't get them all on the screen, that C.S. Lewis left behind for us, one of the greatest philosophers and apologists of the 20th century. And Nancy Pearcey has also, she's still alive, she is the head of the apologetics department at Houston Theological Seminary. And she has written a lot of books. If you have not read Total Truth, you should read it. It's a really good book. But see, God will use anybody. He will use unbelievers. We know he used a donkey at one point, right? So God will use anybody to get his kingdom moving forward. Won't he? He's just such an awesome God. So for the next 4 weeks, we're going to talk about the Christmas story. But how is it a hard saying? Well, I'll tell you. It would be great if God would have packaged up the Christmas story into one book, the whole thing, from beginning to end, but he didn't do that. The Christmas story is spread all over the Bible. It's everywhere. You start in the beginning, and there it is, and there it is in the middle, and there it is at the end. God did not make it easy for us to pull the Christmas story together. Sometimes we think, well, maybe he should have. It would have been great if he did. Then we just open it up and everybody come to this page and we're going to read the whole Christmas story. But for whatever reason, God has chosen to spread it out all over the Bible. And so for the next 4 weeks, we are going to pull that together. And I hope by the time we're done, it makes a whole lot of sense and we also grow. The whole point is to grow, right? There are some undesigned coincidences in here. We've talked about those before. An undesigned coincidence is when two completely separate writers and two completely separate books, and usually writing about two completely separate topics, happen to mention two things that come together perfectly. There are all kinds of undesigned coincidences in the Bible, but there are some in the Christmas story as well. So hopefully we will uncover those. There are also prophecies and clues scattered all over the Old Testament that if you have not read the Old Testament, you're missing out because Jesus is all over the place in the Old Testament. And because we have the New Testament, and because Jesus has come, died, and rose again, the Old Testament has been opened up to us in a way that it never was before. So when we put it all together, we see how brilliant God's plan is. It is just a work of art that nobody on earth could have ever put together. And in fact, none of us would have lived long enough to do over 4,000 years what God has done. So when it all fits together like a jigsaw puzzle, I hope at the end we are all rejoicing in him and just glorifying him for how fabulous he is and how wonderful the Bible is. So we're going to start with the book of Matthew, chapter 2. I'm going to read from verses 1 through 12. And it would be nice if you're able to stand while we read this in honor of just God's word. So if you're not able, that's perfectly fine. So starting in verse 1, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose, and we have come to worship him." When King Herod heard that, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests, teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." That gives me chills. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child, and as soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. You may be seated. Thank you. Today we're focusing mostly on the Magi, and over the next 4 weeks we will focus on them also, but we will bring in the shepherds and some of the others as well. Who were these Magi anyway? We really don't know. I'm just going to tell you right up front. We really aren't sure who these guys are. History is pretty split. They say, oh, they were these astrologers. No, they were magicians. No, they were philosophers. We really don't know. And when we get to heaven, we can ask, because I'm guessing they're up there, maybe. Now, there was a guy in the first century named Philo. He was a writer and a philosopher, and he mentions that the Persian Magi who investigated nature were always going around looking for truth. They were Persian wise men. We call them wise men, but they were I don't want to say astrologers because that sounds kind of new agey, but that's kind of what they were. They examined the stars, they examined nature. They were looking for truth. They were truth seekers. That's what they were. And so that kind of sounds like our Magi, doesn't it? Magi, wise men. That kind of sounds like them. Now, Philo lived in the first century. That's when these guys showed up. So I'm going to go with that. They were Persian truth seekers. That's what they were. Now, we always assume there was 3, right? Because there was 3 gifts. There could have been 2 or 4 or 15. We don't know how many there were. They probably traveled in a big caravan of other people with camels and donkeys carrying their goods. They had to have food. It was a long trip. They had to have protection. So I'm guessing it wasn't just three guys on camels all by themselves. They were probably with a very large retinue moving around doing their thing. And let's talk about the star for just a minute. We have never been able to identify the star. Was it actually a star in the sky? Was it a planet, or was it something else? It did not move like a star. We're going to talk about that again next week or a couple weeks from now. But it did not move like a star or a planet. So there's something unusual about this star. There is no record of the star beyond the biblical text. There is nobody in history that wrote about some awesome thing that happened in the sky right about the time Jesus was born. We do know there were some interesting things in the sky, but none of them moved quite like the star did. And so probably I'm thinking that it's something that appeared to these men. Now, I can tell you that when you're seeking truth, God will make sure you find it. Didn't he say, seek and you will find? Right? Even unbelievers seeking truth, God will ensure that you find it because he wants you to find it. He wants you to find truth more than you want to find truth. He is waiting to give truth to people. And, the minute they turn, he's right there because he wants people to find truth. And I think that because they were truth seekers, that this star was something that appeared to them. And because of the way it moved and the way it seemed to appear and disappear, I think it was a special sign just for these truth seekers. I might be wrong, but that's what it seems to be for me. And this star transformed these men. They started out on a journey that could have lasted up to 2 years, we find out from the time they told Herod. Can you imagine selling everything and going on a 2-year journey on a camel or a donkey or something? They transformed these men. Whatever they saw made such an impact on them that they loaded all their stuff on some animals and they took off. They had to find what this was, and they followed it. And we can assume they followed it for quite some time. They were being obedient to a God they didn't even serve. Isn't that interesting? We Christians sometimes aren't very obedient to a God we claim to serve. But here's these non-believers, these pagans, being obedient to a God that they don't even know. They will get to know him. I believe that they were transformed. They were transformed when they started, but I think when they saw Jesus, they were truly transformed. But they were at this point, early in the journey, they don't even know who they're serving and who sent this star. They're just kind of following it. Well, they became famous now, of course. We sing songs about them and, stuff like that because they allowed God to use them. And that's all God wants from us. Let me use you for my kingdom. What they did is what God wants from all of us. God says, just let me use you. I know you're not perfect. I know you're just human. I know you're not rich and you get tired, and I know you make mistakes, and I don't care about any of that. If you just let me use you, I will use you. That's amazing to me. So God would use anyone whose heart was open. And here we go with the Magi. Now, they could have ignored this sign, but really they couldn't because they were truth seekers. When you finally realize that you're after the true truth, as Francis Schaeffer used to say, true truth, you can't stop. You could, blind your eyes and go back to what you were doing. And sometimes our sin is so comfortable that we know the truth, but we ignore it anyway, but not these guys. They could have ignored that sign and just stayed home, but they didn't. And that's what's so awesome. So when they found that star, they were looking for true truth. True truth is that honest to goodness, it's true. Now, if they were Persian, here's the interesting thing, talking about pulling things together from all over the Bible. If they were Persian, then they probably had access to some of the ancient prophecies. Now, I'm thinking of Daniel, for one. Remember, Daniel served in both the Babylonian and the Persian Empire. And he probably, not only did he write his stuff and take it back, or it got back to Israel, I think Daniel died there. I don't think he ever made it back. But his writings did. But I bet you his writings were also there. And these truth seekers were probably looking at some of Daniel's prophecies. In Daniel 9:24 and 25a, Daniel wrote, and God was telling him, of course, 77s are decreed for your people and your holy city to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, and to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, to anoint the most holy place. Know and understand this. From the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the anointed one, the ruler, comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. All these guys had to do was do the math. If they knew when Daniel lived, when he wrote this, all they had to do was do the math, and they would recognize immediately that they were right in the middle of it. They were right at the end of the 69-7, and the ruler was coming. And then they see this star. And it's like, okay, we're on to something here. But there's another one. Balaam, back in the book of Numbers, Pat's favorite book. I bet you the Magi had heard of Balaam, and I'll tell you why. Balaam, the son of Beor, was a pagan prophet that was hired to curse Israel while they were wandering around out in the desert. Balak, the king of, I forget what he was the king of, he hired Balaam to come, and he brought him up to a mountain where he could see a whole hunk of the people. Could see them all because there was a lot of them, but he could see a large swath. And he paid Balaam to curse them, but God intervened and made him bless them. How many times? Like 3 or 4 times? He made them bless him. Isn't that an awesome story? So Balaam lived way, way back in the 1400s BC. He was a well-known pagan prophet, and I'll tell you why. The Deir or Dire Allah inscription was found in Persia, which is modern-day Iran. And this is a prophecy from Balaam, the son of Beor. It's not the prophecy from the Bible, but it's another one. From Balaam, the son of Beor, we actually have a text from him from the 14th century BC. We don't have a lot, but it does say in there somewhere, Balaam, the son of Beor, says this, and it's a bit of a prophecy. Isn't that, God is so good. He's just so good. But he was hired to curse these Israelites, and he blessed them instead. Numbers 24:15 through 19 says this. When Balaam was all done blessing the Israelites, he gave this little prophecy. The prophecy of Balaam, son of Beor, the prophecy of one whose eyes see clearly. Now, he's a pagan, but whose eyes see clearly, the prophecy of the one who hears the words of God, who has knowledge from the Most High, who sees a vision from the Almighty, who falls prostrate, and whose eyes are opened. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not here, or not near. A star will come out of Jacob, a scepter will rise out of Israel. He will crush the foreheads of Moab, the skulls of all the people of Sheth. Edom will be conquered, Seir, his enemy, will be conquered, but Israel will grow strong. A ruler will come out of Jacob and destroy the survivors of the city. Now, the Magi had access to this prophecy. So you put that together with the star and with Daniel, man, they know they're on to something. It's awesome. They would have been filled with so much hope because they saw it all coming together, and they were obedient to go ahead and follow it to the end, come what may. So that's kind of the end of our story for today. But what does this have to do with us? That is always the question. We serve a God who is the exact same God as the God of the Magi, as the God of Balaam, as the God of Daniel. He's the same God. The things that he did for these pagan wise men, astrologers, whatever they were, the very same things that he did for them, he will do for us because he does not change. That is so awesome. You could search the Bible on God never changes. There are scriptures all over the place. Numbers, Samuel, Psalms, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Hebrew, James, Revelation, and even more. I just ran out of room. There are scriptures reminding us that God is the same. He does not change. He doesn't lie. He doesn't change his mind. Now, it does say sometimes he changed his mind when he gave conditions. If God said, if you do this, I will bless you, and if you do this, I will curse you, and the people were doing this, and then they repented, and then God changed his mind because he said he would. Because that's the kind of God we serve. He does not change. And if he makes a promise, it is for sure. That is absolutely true. Psalm 102:27 says, you are the same and your years have no end. So what God did back then to confirm himself to them, he will do for us to confirm himself to us when we need confirmation. He will do it for us. All we have to do is ask. So our problem is that we're doing everything but seeking truth, right? We're trying to do it all in our own strength. We got saved by Jesus, and now we're out trying to be good Christians, and we're just trying to do it all in our own strength. It's human nature to do that. But we need to be reminded that all we got to do is turn back to God and rest in him. He is the one that wants to work through us. He doesn't want us to work while he's up in heaven watching. He wants us to go, okay, God, here's my hands. Where do you want me to put them? Okay, God, here's my feet. Where do you want me to put them? And let him tell us where he wants us to put them, right? As R.A. Torrey says, I love this, he says, quit it. He wrote in the 1800s. That's such a strange phrase to hear something from somebody. But he comes out and he says this very same thing. We're doing it all in our strength. So quit it. And that's a good lesson for me. We need to look to him. Let him supply us with his power and his strength. And we move forward after he has told us what he wants us to do for him, right? Only he can see the big picture. He's the only one that has the box top to the jigsaw puzzle. We have the pieces. And he's got the box top that has the whole picture on it. And we can be doing things in our own strength and totally missing the mark because we didn't wait for God to show us what he wanted to do. It's hard for us to sit back and do nothing but pray. But I guarantee you that praying is probably the very most important thing that we can do. Praying, 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 and then moving. And don't move until you've prayed enough and you've heard God speak. See, Jesus wasn't born in Bethlehem so we could struggle through our life. He wasn't. He doesn't want us to struggle through life. He absolutely does not want to. He came to free us from all of that. He said, abide in me as I abide in the Father. Abide in him. Rest in him and get your strength from him. Get your direction from him. Who does he want you to pray for? Who does he want you to visit? What does he want you to do? And don't move until you know. And I know that he wants you to know more than you want to know. So if you just stop long enough to ask him, he will tell you. So when the hard times hit, when the struggles arise, like they always do, when the diagnosis comes or there's too much month at the end of the money, all of these things are going to come. We live on a fallen planet, and these are the facts of life. We are never going to be free of them. If you think that you're waiting for that day when you're just free of all that, well, you're going to be waiting a long time. But when those things happen, God is already laying plans, right, Lucy? You said this before church. You said, God's already working. I need it here, but God's already back here. Absolutely. God was already laying down prophecies in the Old Testament for those Magi 1,400 years later. He had already laid the groundwork, and he's doing that for us too. We need something here. We ask for it here. And when we get it, we can look back and see how God started way back here. He's so awesome when he does that. He is always at work for us. Isn't that what the Bible says? He's always at work for us. The problem is that his best doesn't always look like what we expect. Sometimes we get, well, I guess that's the answer, Lord. It wasn't what I was hoping for, but this is the answer. The truth is, he cannot give you anything but his best. He just can't. So we have to take what he gives us and trust that it is the very best because, again, he sees the box top. We don't. We might be asking for something that'll be just a total tragedy down the road. And God doesn't give it to us because he knows. We don't know, you know? So here's the final question, and then I'm done. Well, I do have a song. Do we trust him? Because that is the question. Do we believe? Here's what God asked me this morning. Do you believe in me? And I'm like, yeah, Lord, I believe in you. And he said, do you live like you believe in me? That's the question. Do I live like I truly believe in him? Whew. Yeah. Go past all that. I'm going to let Paul start.